Buckle up for a new episode of Bump-a-holics, the one and only podcast made to teach on all stages of the arrival of a baby, before, during, and after. Whether you're an expecting mother, have questions about fertility, difficulty with lactation, or postpartum, you're sure to learn from our experienced doulas when you listen to Bumpaholics.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Book Club and Casey Women's Ministry. My name is Kristen Mason, and I am the Programs Director with Casey Women's Ministry. And I am joined by Jamie Mackey, and she is our Technology Director with Casey Women's Ministry. And we are going to be continuing our discussion on Book Club. I have been editing these into a little bit more bite-sized pieces, but this particular session, we're going to be talking about chapter 8 through 13. So we'll be cutting that down. So I don't know exactly how many chapters we're going to get through in this particular recording, but within the next like 3 or 4 of recordings, you will get all the way through chapter 13. Okay, so let's get started. So in chapter 8, Lisa has a conversation with her friend Barb, where she actually calls her on the phone and tells her that she is wanting to have a home birth. And Barb has an incredibly negative reaction to this. So Jamie, this really got me thinking about the question of the influences of the voices around us and who we talk to, how they can make us question our own selves. And I was kind of wondering, how do you handle that? How do you kind of give advice to your clients on how to handle that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we all kind of, like, whenever we're making decisions, we kind of know who in our circle is going to be supportive of those decisions most of the time. I mean, that was interesting in the book because, like, she thought that her friend was going to be more supportive than she was. But I think that it's especially around like your birth choices, trying to make sure that you aren't getting surrounding yourself with people who are going to give you that negative energy can be really important, like for like preserving your birth space and the environment there. It's like if you are talking to people in your life that aren't being supportive of the decisions you're making around your birth, then it can be helpful to kind of set boundaries about, like, are they going to be allowed to be in the birth space, or do you need to limit like conversations during the prenatal period to just like keep you in a positive headspace? And that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely agree. I personally had a bit of that experience with my first. My immediate family was really excited about me doing a home birth. My older sister had just had one and it was beautiful. So she got to kind of introduce us to it, and then I just got to benefit from that. My husband's side of the family was really nervous for me. And I remember I actually found it quite funny in my birth space, how uncomfortable they were. So that was good, mostly just because they're the kind of people that they're like, well, we really don't support this, but you are your own autonomous thinking human adult. So you can make your own decisions. So even though it makes us nervous, it's completely up to you. But there's definitely, I'll have clients who have family members or who have friends that are really unsupportive of different birth decisions that they're making. It doesn't necessarily have to be home birth. Maybe they decide that they want to get an epidural, and their friends are like, absolutely, that's a terrible decision. And they're giving their opinions on that. It goes to both sides of the spectrum. Definitely see it a lot with people who are wanting to have VBACs or something along those lines. People just have a really strong opinion about what you should do when you give birth. Are you having this, baby?
Yeah. So many people just have like these visceral reactions because of their own experiences. It's one of, I mean, giving birth is like a really defining experience in your life. And then you just kind of feel this need to just word vomit to pregnant people. And most of the time it's not helpful if you are not being asked.
Yeah, that's a really good standard. If they didn't ask you, just keep it to yourself. That is your opinion, and it doesn't need to be shared. So yeah, basically when I'm trying to give people advice on how to set those boundaries, it's really unique to the person. So this one's actually kind of hard for me to really think. I sit and talk about who are the different people that are in your life, and who have you already started talking to about it? How do you see their reactions going? And kind of get them thinking about it from that perspective before they start having these conversations with people. And then kind of laying the groundwork for, you really should set boundaries. That way people know and can, give them the opportunity to respect them. They might not, but giving them the opportunity to do so is always good.
Yeah, I mean, even if you can like be very upfront about your boundaries, it's like, I'm making these decisions about my birth, and I know that you all may have made completely different decisions, but I really need you to be supportive and positive in discussing this topic with me, because it's really important to me, or like something along those lines.
Yep, I agree. 100% agreement. So that was chapter 8. It itself was a bit of a lengthy chapter because it really deeply outlined the conversation, but it really had one significant point that was really just, who are you allowing to influence you in your decisions and potentially cause you to question yourself? And questioning yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's to look at things from different angles, but doubting, that can really get to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chapter 9. Okay, so Lisa is really making the decision that she actually is going to switch to a home birth. So she goes to an appointment with her hospital midwife, Sarah, and is really surprised that Sarah actually is supportive of a home birth. And she was quite surprised by that. When you were doing the reading, were you surprised by that?
Yeah. Usually, a lot of times providers that don't do home births aren't all that supportive of home births. That seems to be, it's like, if you're supportive of home births, then you actually do home births, is kind of like the
like
line.
them, you tend to do them.
Yeah.
If you like them a lot. Tends to be the case for sure. Have you had any experiences of actually discussing a home birth with people who do births at hospitals, any level of practitioner?
I can't say that I have. I know I've worked with a client before that was at like a birth center, and the midwives also did home births. So like there was like
Cool.
that, but I haven't really done much discussions with providers that only do hospital births.
Yeah. It's a very interesting conversation. I've actually had a number of them, because I will, be doing my doula thing, and a practitioner, nurse, doctor, midwife, whomever, will just turn to me and say, "So do you do home births too?" Just like, and my response is always, well, because I'm not a medical professional, I go where my client is giving birth, and I really feel like it's outside of my scope to advise them on where that is. And then they're always like, oh, yeah, okay, you're right. You're not supposed to be doing that. And then they will ask so many questions. They're so curious. Does it work? What is your plan? Is it safe? And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to talk about this right. Supporting this person who's giving birth, who chose a hospital birth. So she doesn't care about home birth right now. But it's the craziest thing. I've definitely had people that I've talked to about it that they end up being a little bit supportive of it. But for the most part, it ends up being pretty negative. So I personally was really surprised when Sarah ended up being not even just okay to discuss, but openly supportive of. I've even had practitioners that will do something like help correct a shoulder dystocia or something. And by correct, I mean they literally hold the baby's head until the baby came out, which is actually not correcting a shoulder dystocia, that is just forcing it through. That will say, that would have been a really serious problem at a home birth. And it's so hard not to say, actually, at a home birth, they would have followed Gail Gein's flip-flop and probably would have just moved her pelvis out of the way so that the baby could make it through. And then you wouldn't have had to pull on the baby's head. It's probably what would have happened at a home birth. When things like that happen, I get a little snippy, but it's okay. But I was really surprised and pleasantly so. And I'm glad that was her experience. It was really interesting right after she talks about Sarah being supportive of her home birth. She thinks back on her choice of midwife, and she is lamenting that she didn't do more research on who she finally decided to choose. She basically just went with her only legal option, and she didn't want to look into midwives that were practicing under the radar. She wanted to go with the midwife that was legally practicing as a home birth midwife. Have you ever had a client who's had similar regrets? And how did you handle them?
I mean, I've worked with clients that during prenatal care, they decide, I was like, maybe this practitioner's not the right one for me. And we've had lots of discussions on seeking second opinions or and shopping around. You as the client are actually the employer,
Right.
and kind of giving women that power to take charge of their own care, and they are the ones in charge is important. I don't think I've ever had a discussion after the fact of them regretting the provider that they went with,
or any decisions that they made while they were giving birth where they thought, man, if I would have researched that more, I would have made a different decision now that I know what I know.
Yeah, that one can be tough, because we like to hold on to that guilt sometimes. But it's talking through, it's you can only make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time, and just wishing to go back now that you know more it's not really productive to moving on or healing. You can do the research and try with future pregnancies, make different decisions or help educate others, but you can't go back and make changes. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Learning from your past experiences, but not regretting them is definitely better for your mental health, but pretty hard to achieve. I have had clients who, after they give birth, when I'm doing the perinatal, which is the visit where I come and I sit down with them and they tell their birth story to me, that regret and say that they would have made different decisions now that they know what they know. And basically what I try to do is, help them talk through it and help them not regret their decision and to find peace with it. And then kind of proactively, I try to make sure that anytime that I have a story like that, that information gets highlighted in my birth class. Because all of my clients get access to, it's an online birth class. It just makes it a lot easier to make sure that my clients have a basis of information. Because if they go and take a birth class from somebody else, I don't know if they covered what I need them to cover. And I want my clients to be really, really well informed. So if they choose not to take the class, because I give it to them, and they can choose not to watch it, and some of them do. Sometimes that's the response that I get, that their regret is that you probably talked about this at your class, and yes, I went in great depth about this in my class. And so they're, next time we'll actually watch the class, kind of thing. But basically the best that you can do is try to learn from it if you are choosing to give birth again. And I think that this is one of the really big reasons why, like we were talking about in chapter 8, people feel the need to tell other people and like make decisions for them in their birth space, because I don't want you to regret what I regret, or if you don't do this, you will regret it.
Yeah. Like, I think that so many people, they didn't know something going into their birth, and then afterwards they're like, I need to make sure that every single person is aware that this is the decision that I wish I would have made. I know I got a lot of advice like that, especially whenever I was pregnant with my first. Like, I think that's when you get a lot of opinions getting thrown at you, as with that first pregnancy.
That first baby, for sure.
The following media content is intended to only be an educational reference guide and should not be taken as a substitute for medical advice. While KC Women's Ministry adheres to strict self-set guidelines, any advice, instructions, or information found within this media is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. KCWM makes every effort to broadcast correct information. We simply present the views based on evidence-based information. We welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. We are not sponsored by drug or device companies. By listening or viewing this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast. Under no circumstances shall KC Women's Ministry, any guests or contributors to the podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of KC Women's Ministry be responsible for damages arising from the use of the podcast. Viewer discretion is advised.